Hello and welcome back to Drunken PowerPoint Variety Hour. Today's episode, RAM, the middle child of modern computing. So I've been building computers for a good amount of time now. I got a couple of builds under my belt, and I like to gauge exactly how much the customer knows about computers before I get started. And pretty often I'll get, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being a complete fucking idiot, doesn't know anything about computers, and 5 being, savant. I get a lot of 2s, a lot of 3s, some 1s, hardly ever get any 4s or 5s. But regardless of what people actually put on that scale, I hear some pretty interesting stuff when they are talking about RAM. And not just by people that I'm building computers for, it's just, there's a wide spectrum of people out there. I hear them talk about RAM, and it's something, man. I hear a lot of weird things. Okay, so I'm on the internet and I'm talking to someone. They started a PC build. I'm like, hey, I heard you're building a computer. That's fucking awesome. Welcome to Master Race. And they asked them, so what kind of RAM are you using? And the most common answers, I hardly ever get any answers other than this, is I have 8 gigs of RAM. Or I have 16 gigs of memory. That's pretty much the gamut. Well, to me, this is kind of like this situation. Oh, hey, I heard you're a fucking athlete. That's amazing. So like, how, like, you're doing track and field, right? So like, how fast can you run? And it would be like that person came back and said, okay, well, I wear brown running shoes, or you know what? I have a pair of Nike running shoes that I use. Like, what? You didn't really answer the fucking question, right? You just told me about shoes, which, I mean, sure, like, on some metaphysical level, I'm sure that's actually affecting your ability to run fast. But it's not a very complete answer. You didn't really address the question. So that's the run-of-the-mill conversation that I have with RAM. Like, people are giving me a bit of information, but they're not answering the question. What kind of RAM are you using? So I've filtered it down to a list of what people think they know or what they believe about RAM. So here's a list that I came up with. Comes in different sizes. Yes. 8 gig, 16 gig, 4 gig. Right? Comes in different sizes. Absolutely true. Attaches to the motherboard. Also true. It does do that. It's pretty easy to buy and upgrade. People typically know that about RAM. Yes, absolutely true. Chrome uses a lot of it, right? That's kind of the funny haha thing about RAM. Like, have 100 tabs in Chrome. I bet you're using a lot of memory. Yeah, yes, that is true. People understand that RAM is stored data, but they understand that it's not stored permanently like you would store data or programs like on a hard drive or flash drive. Like, if you download something, right, you wouldn't put it in RAM because it's not the permanent solution. Now, people also believe that more is better, although they don't really understand what better means. Everything about computers is always performance. It's the only thing that a computer can be gauged on is performance. Right, so they think, cool, higher my numbers are, better my RAM is, right? And they also believe, okay, my computer absolutely needs it, but they can't really understand why it's there. Well, you know what, people? I'm fucking here, and I'm gonna help you. I hope you brought your permission slip, because we about to drop in this motherfucking volcano. So why is RAM even a thing? Well, we're gonna have to take our magic fucking school bus, and we're gonna have to explore exactly why. Short answer, money. That's what it really boils down to. It's a history lesson, okay? Before RAM was a thing, it's pretty much always been a thing. But before it was the RAM that we know today, this is what a computer looked like. You had a hard drive, and you had a CPU, and they needed to talk to each other. And the reason they are separate is because hard drives are very cheap to make. CPUs, on the other hand, very expensive to make. Now, when I say CPU, what I'm actually talking about is the storage on a CPU. Yes, your processor can store things. It has an area where it can keep data, instructions for programs. It's called a cache. We're going to talk about cache here in a little bit. So, a hard drive over here on the left is used for storing massive amounts of data, instructions for programs, whatever. It's also very slow. It's extremely barbaric. If you think about a hard drive, we're talking about large discs of metal spinning on a spindle with a metallic arm swinging back and forth, reading it with magnets. It's incredibly barbaric. It's a very mechanical process. So it's incredibly slow, especially when you compare it to a CPU, where the CPU's cache data is lightning fast. It's on a completely different spectrum. So the problem here is these two things are completely different, but need to talk to each other. Well, RAM solved that problem. So RAM is the middle child between these two things that needed to talk to each other. So when you bring RAM into the situation, what you get is something that doesn't store a lot of data, although it stores much more than a CPU's cache data would. It's also kind of fast. It's a hell of a lot faster than a hard drive, but it's not quite as fast as a CPU either. Because it's in the middle of those things, it's also in the middle price-wise from on a manufacturing cost view of this. So as CPUs evolve, this is kind of what it looks like today. So hard drives got bigger, they can store more data. Now we have solid-state drives. You know that those are immensely popular right now. Everyone's jumping on the solid-state bandwagon because they're a lot faster than your conventional hard drive is, and they're still pretty cheap. RAM has stayed mostly the same, but got cheaper. Yay! Amazing. I'm very happy to say that RAM is a lot cheaper than it used to be just a couple of decades ago. Processors have changed immensely. So the way we look at the way the processor stores data now, it's in different cache tiers. So in a typical Intel board that is coming out today, what would happen is the RAM is talking to the L3 cache, L3 cache is talking to the L2 cache, L2 cache is talking to the L1 cache. And the closer you get to the CPU, the faster it is, the smaller it is, and the more expensive it is to make. But all in all, RAM is still kind of the middle child there. So when you look at RAM on a historical spectrum, there's a lot of types of RAM out there. However, this has been incredibly simplified over the last couple of years. All of this here, incredibly archaic. This is what it looks like today. Basically, it all started in 2000. We had this thing, DDR SD RAM. It's the modern type of RAM. It stands for Double Data Rate Synchronous Dynamic Random Access Memory. But if you just call it RAM or DDR RAM, we know what you're talking about, so you don't have to worry about incredibly long acronyms. So in 2000, Double Data Rate SD-RAM came out. It was like, hey, this is going to be the future of how we're going to deal with RAM. And as it evolved over the years, what we're at right now is DDR4. It's pretty much the only one that fucking matters. DDR3 is still around. Actually, the rig that I'm recording this on has DDR3 RAM. Chances are, if you've bought your computer anytime recently, except for the last couple of years. Chances are you're using DDR3 RAM, and that's perfectly fine. It's just these DDR things, you can think of them like generations. They have incredibly large performance jumps in between them. So especially between like DDR to DDR2, DDR2 to DDR3, those are huge performance jumps. So you can think of each line here as its own classification for performance. And all the boards that are coming out today, yep, they got DDR4 on them. All right, so that's enough of a history lesson. So how do I actually buy this shit? Well, let's take a look at an Amazon listing. This is RAM that you would find on Amazon. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through this incredibly barbaric name here, and we're going to see exactly what each of these things mean on a specification level. So let's start out easy. Kingston, for this listing at least, that's my make, right? That's my manufacturer. That's who I blame when things go wrong. This over here, the very first part, that's HyperX Fury, right? So that's you can think of this as my model, or I guess you can also kind of think of this as like, that's my brand name of the RAM that I'm buying from Kingston. It's their classification for it. It's their class set. Next you have the color. Mind-blowing. I know. You're learning so much. I'm so proud of you. Next over, we have 16 gigabytes. So that would indicate the size of what I'm buying, or the total amount of storage. We're going to talk about size a little bit later. Next over, you see this word kit followed by this thing in parentheses. It's 2x8 gigabytes. So this is the configuration of the actual item that you're looking at right now. You would read this as 2 by 8 gigs, meaning that you will purchase 2 sticks, and each stick will be 8 gigabytes, meaning that, yes, if you can do multiplication, you end up with 16 gigabytes of total memory. And then down here, if you're buying your stuff from Amazon, right, you have your different kit configurations that you can choose from. For instance, one over here, the one at the bottom here, it's a 8 gigabyte kit of 2. So I would get 2 sticks, and that would total 8 gigabytes. So 2 by 4. Over to the next item, that's the speed, 2133 megahertz. The speed can be represented in a couple of different ways. You may see numbers that say PC4 dash, and then a 5-digit number, 4-digit number. DDR4 dash, and then a 4-digit number. They basically all mean the same thing. They're just trying to get the megahertz across to you. We'll talk about that also a little bit later. DDR4, we already mentioned that, so that's your type. Type is very fucking important because if you have, let's say, an Intel board, that board is going to say what kind of RAM it works with. They are incompatible with each other. Next over, non-ECC. No one cares. Fucking delete this. Next thing, CL14. So this is the CAS latency. CAS says Common Address Strobe. You don't need to know that. Just CAS latency, or even more simpler than that, timing. We're going to talk about timing a little bit later. Over here, DIMM desktop memory. So these are the the set of words that it ensures you that you are not buying laptop memory. So if you see SODIMM, chances are that's laptop memory. Okay, that's memory that fits in a laptop. They're shorter. Yeah. The thing at the bottom of the title, that's the model number, right? So if you ran into problems with, let's say, you bought it directly from Kingston and it was broken when it was shipped to you, this is the number that Kingston would want when they ask you, oh, hey, what did you actually buy from us? That's what they're looking for right there. And then, of course, most important of all, the price. So what does this all boil down to? What makes RAM unique from other products on Amazon? So your RAM has a size, it has a speed, and it has a timing. Now, you also might want to consider aesthetics, right? The RAM has a different color. The heatsink is gonna make it look different. There's different RAMs with like lights and shit. It'll light up, right? It's just that aesthetics, man. You want to look fly? Don't make your computer look like a fucking rainbow vomit. Don't do that. Aesthetics. Okay, so let's address each of these things. Does size matter? I mean, your mom seems to think so. So let's bust a myth here. Does RAM size affect performance? The answer is only if you're maxing out your RAM capacity. So my RAM capacity is 8 gigs. I will not have a problem until I'm using more than 8 gigs of memory. So this image down here, this Windows 7 file explorer, you'll see a file down here, pagefile.sys, very fucking important file. So basically, if your RAM overflows, the data can't be stored in it, so it has to store it in the next lowest tier, which is usually your hard drive. And that is bad, because as we've already discussed, hard drives are slow and are barbaric and are much slower than RAM. So that's not cool. This pagefile.sys, that's actually the overflow information that would have been placed in RAM had you not been a complete fucking idiot. So what RAM size is right? For me, it's a very important question. So it actually depends on what you're using the computer for, what your multitasking habits are, what kind of applications are you using. So for basic use, no gaming, you're not using any professional apps, I'd even go as far as to say you're not even really considered with using things like Microsoft Office. 4 gigs. That's pretty much all you need for that case. Next step up, modern use. Alright, now you're using Microsoft Office, you're playing a couple of games here. 8 gigs. That's pretty much all you need. I know, so there's going to be some RAM fanboys out there watching this. You're like, fucking 8 gigs? Are you shitting me? You're shitting on my chest right now. I am shitting on your chest right now, and I'm shitting in the number, the figure 8. Professional use. So if we're talking about Photoshop, right? Using Adobe Premiere, you're making hot memes, right? You're using some heavy multitasking. Those things take a lot of processing power and a lot of data. So you want your data to be fast, right? All of those things have to be stored lightning fast. You're gonna need some more, so I'd recommend 16 gigs or even higher than that if you're really baking some dank memes. 16 gigs is usually just about all you need. 32 in almost every case. That's just an overkill, unless you're doing some like massive server build or some shit. 16 gig, even that is a lot of overkill in a lot of situations. So to keep in mind, between these things, 4 gig, 8 gig, 16 gig, the price gap between those things are actually pretty small. It's not an enormous amount of money that you need to spend to go between these different tiers. So you know what? Don't sweat it. It's so easy to upgrade that what I'd recommend is that if you don't think you need a lot, just buy the smaller amount, upgrade later. No pressure, man. No pressure at all. Alright, so what about RAM speed, right? The megahertz thing. DDR generations matter, as I've already discussed. So the one that we're on, DDR4, cool, you're buying DDR4 memory. DDR4 memory. Like I've already said, the DDR generations are incompatible with each other. So if your board has DDR4 memory slots, you're using DDR4 memory, man, you are up to date. Like I said, I'm using DDR3. You are ahead of me. Get your dicks out. Let's measure them. So the megahertz number, it doesn't make a huge difference anymore. It used to. It's not the case anymore. So if you're debating like, oh, okay, do I want to buy this DDR4 2400 memory or this DDR4 2666 memory? Just get the cheaper one. Like the performance increase is between 0 and 5% in a lot of these cases. It's a very small performance gap. For gaming use, you're not going to notice a difference. In professional uses, you might notice a slight difference. You might want to splurge out on, you know, bumping up the speed there. But in most cases, you really don't need to be concerned about like what's the megahertz on my RAM. Okay, so the last thing that we covered was timings. If you recall the Amazon listing, and here's the technical specs for that same listing that we were talking about before. Timings, they go about a couple of different names. So CL is just cast latency, goes by latency, delay. Timings is usually the catch-all for this, so I usually just call it timings. Timings, they come in different forms when you're looking at them. For instance, the one on the right here, the timings are listed 15, 17, 17, 35. Only the first number matters. No one really gives a shit about the other numbers. So in this case, you would say that your timings or your cast latency is 15. So what does that mean? Is this important? Kind of. I'd say it's more important than the megahertz thing. It's much less important than the generation, right? So if we're using the cast latency to compare performances, you can actually only do that within DDR4, within DDR3, within that same generation. Always your DDR type, it trumps all. The higher that number is, the better off you are in performance. You just get outclassed. Alright, that was a lot of material. And there's still much more material to cover, but you know what? I'm just going to make this a lightning round. So here we go. Q&A time, shit stain. Let's do it. Can you overclock RAM? Yes. Is it useful to overclock RAM? Not really. Does RAM generate heat like processors do? The answer is yes. Yes, they do. My RAM doesn't have a heat sink. Should I be worried? No. You should not be worried. Should I pay attention to the heat sink at all? Only for aesthetic purposes. We've already covered this. It's like color. Rarely your heatsink can get in the way of the CPU cooler. This is why you should always use sites like PC Part Picker to ensure that everything is compatible with everything else. It just works. PCPartPicker.com. Please use it. It's amazing. Can I change my RAM's heatsink? Yeah, probably. They either pop off or screw in. Yeah, you can do that. Can RAM store data long term? We've covered this. No. No, it cannot. Requires constant electricity to work. The second you turn off your computer, guess what? RAM's empty. I'm upgrading my motherboard. Do I also need to upgrade my RAM? If it requires a different DDR type, you do. So if you're coming from a board that has DDR3 and you bought a board that uses DDR4, yes, you must always upgrade your RAM. The thing about DDR3 and 4, they fit in the same slots, so it's hard to get those correct sometimes. It'll fit in the same slot, it'll look like it is compatible, it is not compatible. So once you get beyond that, you still have to check your motherboard's specifications for your frequency compatibility to make sure that your speeds are actually allowable in that board. Some of them may need to be overclocked, and sometimes that happens automatically. It depends on the board. How much faster is DDR4 than my solid-state drive, which connects on the kind of the de facto bus, which is SATA 3? The answer is a lot. But things are changing. As SSDs get faster and we find faster buses for them to work on, we could see a change. And maybe one day in the distant future, we could see RAM being phased out. And that would be a utopia. That would be amazing. So what's the whole dual channel thing, right? I was reading the name of this product and it mentioned, oh, it's dual channel RAM. Cool. Oh, my motherboard, it also says dual channel. What the hell does that mean? It means RAM sticks on your board can work in pairs. Your motherboard must support this to actually work. And chances are, if you're using a modern board, your motherboard probably has dual channel RAM. Should I use dual channel configs? Absolutely. You get an increase in performance in it. It's not a huge increase, but yeah, it's noticeable. So For this reason, what I recommend is that you buy your RAM kits in pairs of 2. Like we were talking about kit configurations, you want 2 by 4 gigabytes, right? So now you have a pair that will work in sync with each other in a dual channel configuration. Why doesn't my RAM fit into my Mobo's RAM slot? You bought the wrong type of RAM, you dipshit. Pay attention. My computer's running slow and I think it's RAM related. What the fuck do I do? You can restart your computer, which, like I mentioned, once you turn off a computer, it empties your RAM. What happened is that you were probably paging too much, right? We discussed this situation where you're overflowing your RAM, you're putting too much in RAM, now you got a page file, you're paging too much, and that can significantly slow down your computer. Or you know what, just as an alternative, close your porn tabs, you fucking idiot. I have a surplus of RAM that isn't being used. Is my computer faster because of this? No, shut up. I'm looking at this pre-built from Best Buy. Why doesn't it have specs for my RAM? Best Buy is garbage. Average consumers are stupid. All I care about is gaming. Should I care about RAM more than what this video suggests? No, you should not. What does DDR actually stand for? It stands for double data rate. What happened is, before we had DDR, we had a single stream of bits in the RAM bus. Now we doubled it, so we doubled the data rate. And DDR2 doubled it again. DDR3 doubled it again. And DDR4 doubled it yet again. Video cards have memory called GDDR5. Is this better than DDR4? These things are completely and entirely unrelated to each other. It is just a coincidence. What happens if I mix 2 different speeds of RAM? Well, your computer, it runs the faster stick at the lower speed. So you're not getting, you're basically not getting what you bought. So you're not getting what you paid for. It's the same thing with timings. Just make sure that they're both compatible with your Mobo if you're actually doing this, but ultimately, it's not recommended that you're mixing speeds. Just, that's not cool. That was a lot of fucking content. Holy shit. Like, comment, subscribe. I love you. Goodbye.